My wife had an affair with her gym trainer and asked for half of everything when we divorced. But she didn't realize that my dad actually owned our house and savings secretly. I never imagined I'd find myself sharing my story here, yet here I am. At 35, I've been an accountant at a local firm for nearly a decade. Known for my practical approach and level-headedness, I've managed to remain composed throughout a recent personal upheaval. I am married to Kathy, who is 33. Our journey began 5 years ago, culminating in marriage 2 years back. We haven't had children, which in retrospect seems somewhat fortuitous. Since our marriage, Kathy left her marketing career to focus on our life together. I was supportive. My income was sufficient for both of us, and I believed her career break was just a temporary phase. Our life included a modest home and a savings account, nothing lavish, but enough for comfort. Kathy spent most of her time at home, but a shift in her demeanor became apparent recently. It was subtle at first, more time spent out with friends or at the gym, a decrease in affection and defensiveness when I broached the subject of her behavior. I initially attributed it to stress or a marital rough patch. However, as days turned into weeks, a gnawing suspicion grew that something deeper was amiss. My fears were confirmed one evening. While Kathy showered, her phone buzzed. A message popped up from someone named Derek, her gym trainer. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, babe." The casual glance that led me to open her phone unveiled a trail of explicit texts and plans for a future that glaringly excluded me. Stunned, I stared at the device. The betrayal by Kathy, the woman I had married and trusted, was palpable. Yet, I felt an overwhelming numbness rather than anger or sadness. Perhaps it was the initial shock, or maybe my pragmatic nature surfacing, but I knew I needed to confront her calmly and rationally. As Kathy emerged from the bathroom, I handed her the phone calmly and asked for an explanation. Initially, she dismissed it as a mere joke. However, when I read some of the messages aloud, she realized denying it was futile. Without any sign of regret, she bluntly stated, "I want a divorce." There was no apology, no guilt, just a cold and detached declaration. She confessed that she had been seeing Derek for some time and was no longer happy with our marriage. Plainly, she told me she was leaving me for him. What caught me off guard next was her immediate shift to discussing the division of our assets. She claimed entitlement to half of everything, our home, the savings, all that we had accumulated. She justified her demand by saying she had put her career aside to support mine, a point that struck me as audacious. Despite the shock, I remained composed. Perhaps I had emotionally detached already, or maybe I knew something she didn't. I agreed to her terms without argument, stating she could have half of what she believed was ours. Her surprise was evident. She likely expected resistance or emotional turmoil, but I refused to gratify her with that. Unknown to Kathy, and something I chose not to disclose, was that nearly all our significant assets were in my father's name. He's a cautious man and had advised me early on, when I started earning well, to secure my assets this way. He argued it was a protection against potential future problems like debts, legal issues, or a failing marriage. At the time, it seemed like prudent financial planning. Now, as Kathy demanded her share, I knew her expectations would not be met. On paper, my possessions were modest: a bank account with just enough funds, a car, and some personal items. The house, though appearing to be ours, was technically owned by my dad. My substantial savings? Those were managed by my dad as well. To avoid a drawn-out legal battle, I proposed we settle our divorce through mediation, thinking it would be less costly and simpler for both of us. She agreed, likely believing she'd secure a large part of my assets. What Kathy didn't realize was that this safeguard with my dad had been established long ago. It wasn't out of anticipation for such a scenario, but looking back, I appreciate my father's prudence. The house and most of the investments Kathy hoped to claim were technically his. I've always maintained a discreet financial presence under my own name, living modestly enough that no one, Kathy included, ever raised doubts. Once the divorce proceedings commenced, I involved my dad. Naturally, he was not happy about the situation, but he grasped the need for discretion. We consulted a lawyer to ensure our arrangements were legally solid. As it turned out, everything was in order. Kathy could claim whatever she wanted, but legally there wasn't much under my name for her to claim. Not wasting any time, Kathy hired a forceful divorce lawyer, one of those who vow to strip everything possible from the opposing party. In response, I chose a low-profile yet skilled attorney experienced in handling complex financial cases like mine. I aimed to keep the proceedings dignified and was determined not to be bullied by Kathy and her aggressive legal team. The first step was asset disclosure, which did not unfold as Kathy had hoped. I disclosed everything legally required, transparently showing the limited assets under my name. Upon seeing the reality, the confident demeanor of her lawyer waned. Both appeared bewildered and possibly suspicious, but they were powerless to change the facts. My disclosures were complete and honest, with no assets concealed. Right then, Kathy lashed out, calling me names and accusing me of deceit. Despite her anger, I had provided complete transparency. After enduring her barrage of accusations and raised voices, I left, suggesting we resume discussions once she calmed down. Now I find myself turning to Reddit, uncertain if I've handled things correctly. So Reddit, am I the wrongdoer for agreeing to give her half, knowing well she won't receive nearly what she expects? Update. Things are escalating. After the initial asset disclosure, Kathy was in utter disbelief. She was convinced I was concealing assets, her accusations intensified, and her lawyer's demeanor was no better. The shock was evident on their faces upon reviewing the modest figures documented. It wasn't long before they demanded a more exhaustive investigation. Kathy was adamant about uncovering the assumed hidden wealth, our house, investments, and savings. She was staggered that our years of marriage seemed to yield so little to divide. Her attorney enlisted a forensic accountant, suspecting concealed funds. Initially, this made me anxious, not due to any hidden assets, but because of the potential to prolong the proceedings. However, reassurance from my lawyer and a thorough review confirmed there was nothing to uncover. Everything declared was legally accurate. There was no evidence linking to the assets in my father's name. As the investigation persisted, Kathy's frustration became evident. Accustomed to getting her way, she struggled to accept that she would gain little from the divorce. She then shifted tactics, arguing that her role in managing our home and foregoing her career significantly contributed to my professional success and our lifestyle, insisting this merited a substantial share. While it was beneficial to have Kathy manage the household occasionally, I wasn't heading a Fortune 500 company. I'm a mid-level accountant with a stable job that hasn't seen dramatic income changes. Despite this, she insisted that her sacrifices in her marketing career had propelled my professional stability, but realistically, she hadn't been in her career long before choosing to stay home, a decision she made independently, not at my insistence. Her lawyer emphasized her supposed sacrifices to paint a picture of me benefiting from her actions, but the evidence was thin. They even attempted to drag my parents into the proceedings, accusing them of financial interference. This accusation, suggesting they helped hide assets or gave me undisclosed funds, particularly upset me. My parents were unrelated to our finances, and involving them was unnecessary and harsh. My attorney quickly countered these baseless claims, but it was obvious that Kathy was grasping at straws. As the divorce process prolonged, she took a more direct approach. If the legal route failed to meet her expectations, she aimed to tarnish my reputation by other means. She began circulating claims within our social network that I had been secretly stashing money and had been financially manipulative throughout our marriage. These allegations shocked me, especially as mutual friends relayed how she portrayed herself as a victim left with nothing, deceived about our financial reality. Kathy even resorted to social media, posting cryptic yet pointed messages about narcissistic behavior and betrayal. While some people sympathized with her, most who knew us well understood the truth. They were aware that such deceit was not in my character. It was exasperating to watch Kathy try to tarnish my reputation simply because the situation wasn't in her favor, but I remained composed. I knew the truth, and so did those who truly mattered. More importantly, I was focused on ensuring she didn't extract more than was fair from me. While Kathy orchestrated a smear campaign, I was diligent in safeguarding my interests. My lawyer and I maintained constant contact, compiling all necessary evidence to validate my narrative. I meticulously documented every interaction with Kathy, noting each of her demands and her attempts to portray me negatively. Anticipating that these records might be pivotal in court, I also began collecting proof of her affair with Derek. Although adultery isn't always decisive in divorce outcomes, I aimed to clarify that she wasn't the aggrieved party. This included saving texts between her and Derek, photos of them together, and even accounts from friends who knew of the affair but had remained silent. My intention wasn't to embarrass her, but to expose the truth. Moreover, I braced for the repercussions once it became public that she wouldn't be receiving half of our assets. I kept to myself, concentrating on my career and personal well-being while preparing for the next stages of the divorce. An interesting twist was Derek's reaction as the divorce grew contentious. Initially, he was enthusiastic about their plans to start anew together. However, as complications arose, he began to withdraw. It became apparent he was less committed than Kathy had believed. His hesitance escalated when he realized that aligning with her might entangle him in financial predicaments. Kathy envisioned a lavish future with Derek, but he balked at the commitment, especially as his professional reputation at the gym suffered due to the unfolding scandal. It seems that people are reluctant to train with someone known for engaging with married women, and now Derek is distancing himself from Kathy. Observing this, I can't help but feel a mixed sense of sympathy and remembrance of her actions. Personally, I'm grappling with conflicting emotions. On one side, there's a sense of vindication. I successfully protected my assets, and Kathy didn't receive the windfall she expected. However, there's also a lingering sadness. This was, after all, my marriage. I once loved Kathy deeply and envisioned building our life together. Watching our relationship disintegrate is challenging, even though I believe it's ultimately for the best. Update. Since my last entry, Kathy's desperation has escalated dramatically. Realizing she won't secure the financial outcome she anticipated, she has resorted to more drastic measures to disrupt my life. Most concerning is her recent threat to damage my career and reputation. She explicitly warned that if I don't ease the divorce proceedings or increase her settlement, she would tarnish my name at my firm. This threat materialized when she began appearing at my office uninvited. The first visit was under the guise of needing a discussion. However, when I made it clear there was nothing left to negotiate, she became agitated. She raised her voice, threatening to expose me to my colleagues. Thankfully, I managed to escort her out before the situation worsened, but her unpredictability is becoming more apparent. Kathy has since moved back in with her parents, where her erratic behavior continues. Although her parents are supportive, they are evidently disappointed with how things are unfolding. Even Kathy's parents seem to see through her portrayal as a victim. Mutual friends have shared that she's been increasingly volatile, arguing with her family and seeming on the brink of a breakdown. Legally, things are escalating too. Kathy's lawyer is tirelessly seeking any possible leverage against me. They've attempted to subpoena my parents' financial records, despite clear explanations from my lawyer that my parents' assets are irrelevant to our divorce. It's an evident strategy to unsettle me, but it's not succeeding. Moreover, they've moved to depose my colleagues, hoping to unearth any evidence of concealed assets or undisclosed income. Their efforts are desperate, yet handling these continual challenges is taxing. Each time we address one request, another emerges, turning this ordeal into a seemingly endless strategic battle. However, thanks to my lawyer's competence and the robust legal safeguards my father implemented, I've managed to maintain the upper hand. Nonetheless, the process is draining. I'm uncertain how much longer I can sustain this before it potentially escalates to a full court trial. On the topic of legal measures, we've engaged in mediation twice, both sessions ending in futility. The first meeting dissolved in just 20 minutes after Kathy adamantly demanded half of the house and our savings. When my lawyer clarified that the house was under my father's name and the savings were not as substantial as she presumed, Kathy stormed out, accusing the mediator of bias and me of deceit. The second mediation attempt was no more productive. Kathy arrived with a slew of unrealistic demands, including complete ownership of the house and a sizable portion of our nearly non-existent savings, coupled with alimony for 5 years. As my lawyer reiterated the legal facts, that she wasn't entitled to these demands, Kathy's frustration boiled over. She erupted, loudly proclaiming her sacrifices for our marriage and how I was allegedly leaving her destitute. Sitting through the mediation, I struggled to maintain composure. Kathy's accusations, painting me as the cause of all her problems, were infuriating, especially considering she initiated the divorce after her affair. It was apparent after that tumultuous session that court proceedings were inevitable. Furthermore, Kathy has been financially strained, borrowing money from friends and family to manage her legal expenses. The prolonged nature of the divorce was clearly unexpected, and her funds are dwindling. How she plans to continue paying her assertive lawyer is beyond me, but it's not my concern. Her increasing desperation is evident in her erratic behavior. Mutual friends have shared that she's isolating herself, constantly lamenting about how I've supposedly ruined her life. This continuous narrative of victimhood has even begun to wear on her friends, leading some to distance themselves due to the ongoing drama. Meanwhile, I've remained focused on handling the situation with as much calm and strategy as possible. Every accusation or demand from Kathy is met with solid evidence from my side. We comply fully with every document request as I have nothing to conceal. My lawyer ensures we adhere strictly to legal standards, unlike Kathy's team, which seems more flexible with their tactics. We've also been vigilant about protecting my parents' privacy, thwarting Kathy's attempts to drag them into the dispute. Legal safeguards are effectively preventing her from accessing their financial records. Her desperation is transparent. She seems convinced that a deeper investigation will uncover hidden wealth. However, there's nothing to uncover. Update. The day of the court hearing finally arrived, charged with tension. Kathy testified first, aggressively claiming I had obscured assets. She accused me of financial manipulation, concealing funds in secret accounts, and misleading her about our true financial status. Kathy portrayed herself dramatically as a victim on the stand, tearfully recounting how she sacrificed her career to support mine and was now left destitute. She became visibly emotional, claiming she was blindsided by both the divorce and my alleged financial deceit. However, the turning point came when my lawyer presented concrete evidence of her affair with Derek. The revelation of texts, pictures, and details about her relationship visibly shifted the courtroom's perception. As her story of victimhood faltered, she attempted to minimize the affair, suggesting it was a mere error unrelated to our divorce. Nonetheless, her credibility was severely undermined, and it became evident that her financial claims were motivated more by self-interest than necessity. When it was my turn to testify, I maintained composure, focusing solely on the facts. My lawyer had prepared me thoroughly. I understood that emotional responses or defensiveness could jeopardize my position. I detailed the long-standing arrangement of having my assets in my father's name, provided full disclosure of my financial situation, and recounted my efforts to resolve matters amicably through mediation. I also highlighted Kathy's threats, her unpredictable behavior, and the damaging public accusations she had levied against me. We presented clear documentation disproving her numerous allegations, establishing the true state of our finances. The house was my father's, our savings were modest, and no hidden wealth existed as she had claimed. The judge appreciated my straightforward approach. I was factual, neither demonizing Kathy nor downplaying the actual events. Our clear presentation of the facts, supported by key witness testimonies during the trial, effectively solidified our case. The trial continued with my father taking the stand, clarifying the long-established financial protections he had arranged. He explained that the house was in his name and that he controlled the investments, all set up for long-term security. He affirmed that these assets were his alone, leaving Kathy with no legal claim. Following my father, a colleague from work testified. Kathy's team had suggested I was receiving undisclosed payments, but my colleague decisively refuted this by detailing my modest income and regular, transparent salary arrangements. There were no secret bonuses or hidden income streams, just the salary I had fully disclosed. These testimonies were pivotal, clearly illustrating the baselessness of Kathy's claims. The judge recognized the transparency of my financial arrangements, dismissing any notion of deceit on my part. After days of testimony and legal deliberations, the judge finally issued the verdict. It was immensely relieving to hear that the divorce would be granted in my favor, with Kathy's demands for the house and savings categorically denied. The assets, legally under my father's name, were confirmed to be out of her reach. She received only a minimal alimony, short-term and barely sufficient to cover her legal expenses, far from supporting the lifestyle she had anticipated. The judge noted Kathy's affair and her minimal financial contributions to our assets as influential in his decision. His ruling underscored her failure to present herself genuinely as a victim. As the verdict was announced, the burden of months of accusations, and the anxiety of potential loss dissipated. Legally vindicated, I felt a profound sense of relief. Kathy, however, reacted poorly to the outcome. Overwhelmed by the judge's decision, she tearfully accused the system of being unfair and claimed I had deprived her of her rightful share. She left the courtroom abruptly, visibly distressing her lawyer with her dramatic exit. Kathy clearly hadn't anticipated the possibility of losing the case, and her shock was evident. For me, the predominant feeling was relief. I expressed my gratitude to my lawyer, who had been exceptionally proficient throughout the ordeal, and left the courthouse. As I walked out, my phone buzzed continuously with congratulatory messages from friends and family who had heard about the verdict. The news had quickly circulated within the local community, bringing me a sense of vindication and the opportunity to move forward. However, Kathy was not ready to let go. Outside the courthouse, she unraveled dramatically in front of onlookers, loudly proclaiming that I had manipulated the system and vowing to appeal the decision. Financially, though, her prospects for an appeal were dim. It was widely known during the trial that her funds were depleting, and she continued to rely on loans from friends and family just to manage her expenses. This underscored how crucial my father's strategic financial advice had been in safeguarding my assets. Without his foresight, the situation could have been drastically different. I am profoundly thankful for the unwavering support from my friends, family, and colleagues who stood by me despite Kathy's attempts to tarnish my reputation. Looking to the future, I remain optimistic. While I recognize that recovering from this ordeal will take time, both emotionally and financially, I am eager to progress and regain normalcy in my life. This experience has imparted several valuable lessons, and I am determined not to repeat past mistakes. For now, my focus is on embracing the tranquility that comes with closing this tumultuous chapter and enjoying the peace of moving on.